Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Black Butler, chapter 180. When we last left our heroes, Baldroy was continuing to be bad in the kitchen, but a food delivery sort of alerted Sebastian to some suspicious people lurking around the nearby village. Later that night, they arrive. Baldroy goes to sort of try to, he brings his gun to, investigate, and he runs into Sebastian, who tells him to go into this, storage room, heavily implying there is something there that will help them fight these intruders. Baldroy goes down there, and he sees a bunch of, antique axes and swords and glaives and shit. And that's kind of where we left off, with things getting very close to actually happening on Black Butler. So our picture here is the 15th anniversary of Black Butler, chapter 180, with a chapter a month for 15 years. We are now 15 years into Black Butler. Strawberry Jubilee. I don't know if that's the technical term for a 15th anniversary, but okay. We see Sebastian, there's strawberries around him, and teacups and flowers, and of course a skull with some strawberries in it. Chapter 180, the Butler hiring. Which is interesting, given that Baldroy should already be hired right now. But we open where we left off, with Baldroy in this sort of, weapons storage room. What the? And he looks around. Those are antique swords and axes. They have the latest rifles and explosives, too. And Baldroy's kind of drawn to this sword and thinks for a sec. No, it's not really thinking for a sec. He runs his finger across it, and we see how, clean the cut is. He, cuts his finger to, test it out. Everything here is ready for use. They've been maintained so they can be used right away. And he flashes back to Sebastian. I am sure you would be able to fulfill my master's demanding requirements. And we see Baldroy he sees his reflection in this blade, and then we flash back to what might be the cave where he met Sebastian. He's holding on to a much shorter knife, and we see in the reflection he's bloodied up and he's terrified. The knife is shaking. And yeah, we get a flashback within our flashback to that first moment, as Sebastian tells him, hello, how about a cup of tea? Back in that cave with the mountain of corpses and the picnic blanket. And Baldroy just sort of breathes heavy, and he looks at the tea. We see him, grasping his knife, shivering. We see, the warm food. And he runs over and he tries to, he threatens Sebastian, a knife to the neck. Not really necessary, he was offering you food, but okay. And, we see the tea doesn't even really spill out. It kind of gets close, but it just goes back into the cup. And Sebastian just kind of comments, does an American prefer coffee over tea? And Baldroy just snaps, who the hell are you? We were surrounded by the natives outside. Did they hire you? But Sebastian counters, please slow down. Let me explain one by one. My employer is a certain earl, who possesses a domain in Great Britain. And Baldroy kind of freezes there. Great Britain? An earl? And he sort of head in hand has a mini breakdown. You're making no sense at all. Am I seeing things because I'm starving? Am I already dead? And you're the Grim Reaper here to take me away? And we see Sebastian has his little devil. We can see his fangs when he grins. You're mistaken. I am not a Grim Reaper. I am merely a butler. So we're seeing here kind of the reason of why this chapter is dubbed hiring. Because apparently it looks like the bulk of this chapter is going to be a flashback within a flashback. And Baldroy kind of freezes. A butler? Bullshit! Did you come here to mock a straggler? You're out of your mind! And he presses the blade back up to Sebastian's throat. And then he kind of freezes. He can't quite draw the blade. I can't slash his neck. I don't even have enough strength left to kill him. And he sort of relaxes, almost out of necessity. And Sebastian kind of laughs. Please calm down. How about you eat something first? I personally recommend the freshly baked scones over chuck-eye roll of uncooked meat. And Baldroy looks up, and he looks at one of, the corpses of the soldiers. I'm guessing the implication Sebastian had there was, the chuck-eye roll of uncooked meat is, eating the soldiers, I guess? Out of necessity? And then Baldroy turns to look at the food. They may be poisoned, but we can see him swaying under, like, after seeing the food. And he just chows down. He cannot stop himself once he starts. Sebastian can, like, calmly pour some tea. You may keep eating. So won't you listen to what I have to say? The manor I work for is seriously short of hands. What Master requires of his servants is extremely demanding, that we cannot even place newspaper adverts to attract candidates. That leaves me no choice but to travel the whole country and recruit candidates myself. I mean, he's not really traveling the country at this point if he's, like, in America. But Baldroy thinks, you're recruiting servants? I've taken care of cows, but I've never taken care of rich people. And Sebastian just kind of suspiciously responds, there are many ways of caring for a nobleman. I crossed the ocean in search of superior American talent. Then I happened to hear a story of a private warrior who has fought many fierce battles against the natives, but always returns to the battlefields alive. I'm sort of not digging into the sort of uncomfortable topic of Baldroy slaughtered Native Americans, because it's just sort of a lot, and I don't really want to dig into the racial implications there. But I see it, and I'm uncomfortable by it. Let's just leave it at that. Sebastian goes on, so I had to see you. I know I was being impudent, but I came without sending you a letter in advance. And Baldroy just kind of asks, so, this servant you're looking for, will be Mr. Aristocrat's bodyguard? Yes. You will also have other duties in addition to providing your services as a private warrior. And Baldroy sort of glares at him and thinks, he took the trouble of coming to this hell just to recruit a bodyguard? No way. His posh Queen's English is annoying. His penguin suit doesn't have a speck of mud on it. Who the hell is he? Sebastian then continues, I am sure you would be able to fulfill my master's demanding requirements. And Baldroy is a little suspicious there. Requirements? And Sebastian goes on, age, gender, race, background is no concern. You do not need to provide a reference. The manor welcomes servants with no prior experience. However, you must be a true expert at killing people. And just the casualness that Sebastian presents that with causes Baldroy to freeze. Sebastian then kind of looks at his clock. Oh dear, it is time in Great Britain to prepare tea for master. I shall take my leave now. And he just gets up from somewhere out west to go right back to Britain in like a jiffy. But Sebastian hands him a letter before he goes. If you are interested in changing careers, do come to Great Britain at once. Or do come to Great Britain once, not at once. And then Sebastian gets up, well then, I shall be waiting for a favorable answer. And Baldroy is just kind of staring at the letter, kind of questioningly, and then he looks up, hey! And then Sebastian's gone. Goodbye. Just leaving that letter behind. He opens the letter, he's a ticket to, from New York to somewhere in Great Britain. And he looks down at the signature on the ticket, Earl Phantomhive. This means I need to find a way out of this hellhole by myself. Good thing my stomach's full now, at least. He stands up. I didn't know food so much more important than money or weapons. And then we're back to our, not actual present, but like the one layer of flashbackery. I'm honestly really glad that Yana did all of that in like only part of a chapter. I think we still have another. I'm reading this on Imgur, and a couple of pages ago it said load 12 more pages. So I think we got like 10 more pages of present flashback, which is a significant improvement on what she might have done for like Mey-Rin, where that little scene would have been like 2 or 3 chapters. Either way, back in the basement of the manor starts to rumble. Baldroy looks around kind of shocked. What was that sound and shaking? It came from the floor right above. And we see he's honestly like still in his like pajamas, basically, like in his slippers. And he runs out into the main foyer with like, he might have that knife. He might be weaponless though, which is, no, he brought a gun. That's what's going on there. But he sees the foyer, there's like blood stains, a part of the railing is missing. And he looks around. I guess I was too late. I mean, thinking back to Mey-Rin and Baldroy and Mey-Rin and Finnian, thinking they're dead. But given what we know about Finnian, like the specific type of damage there feels like that's Finnian's doing. Admittedly, it's been a while since we've seen him do anything at all, but that like feels like it's him. And someone approaches, oh, Mr. Baldo, and it's Finnian carrying a bloody pillar and like either a corpse or like a bloody body that's maybe still alive. We seem to have many guests today, and Baldroy kind of, mutters out, "Hey, you." And Finnian just kind of cheerily goes on, to come at such an inconvenient hour, when young master is already asleep. And we see another intruder hiding behind a wall. Baldroy notes him right as he comes out with the pistol. And Baldroy kind of, I think, knocks Finnian over to, like, get him out of the way of the bullet. Hey, kid, duck! And Finnian sort of falls over, huh? And Baldroy shoots. But Baldroy tries to shoot, but someone else shoots first, right through the side of the head. That's Mey-Rin. This is the part where Baldroy realizes just what kind of household he's gotten himself wrapped up in. The body hits the floor. Baldroy looks around. Where'd that come from? And Mey-Rin up on top of the stairs. Finny, don't let your guard down. You don't. And Baldroy sort of looks at Mey-Rin, now serious for the first time. I killed almost everyone who was outside. And Baldroy's just super confused. Are you that jittery maid? Then Mey-Rin sort of ignores him, going back to Finnian. I might have read that in the wrong order, actually. What about you? And Finnian, like, licking the blood off his finger. I killed 3. Oh, was it 4? And Baldroy just shouts, idiot! Huh? And Baldroy, like, grabs Finnian. You need to count how many enemy soldiers you killed. If you don't keep track of the survivors, there's no way of making sure you've killed them all. So we see here a pretty nice, like, dichotomy. Finnian, I'm not quite sure if we ever got Finnian's full backstory back in Emerald Witch. I think the implication, though, was that he was some kind of experiment and, like, could kind of hulk out occasionally. They're not quite the visual hulking, but you know what I mean. And that's in stark contrast to Baldroy, who's just a very effective soldier. And Mey-Rin, who's a very effective sniper. But, Baldroy has been in, like, the heat of battle. Mey-Rin sniping is sort of done at a distance. Baldroy is surrounded by enemies all the time. Like we saw back in the cave, he was surrounded by natives. And so he has a very different take on battle than the other two do. If you don't track the survivors, there's no way of making sure you've killed them all. I heard at least 5 sets of footsteps. There must be more guys hiding somewhere. Lose sight of one enemy, and 10 of your men will die. And Baldroy, he's just sort of taking control of the room again. Where is the Runt's room? Despite the fact, by the way, that he has done really nothing for this whole battle. He's trying to assert command. And Mey-Rin looks at him, the Runt? You mean young master? And Finnian answers, young master's bedroom is the south room on the 2nd floor. And Baldroy runs up the stairs, Finnian calls after him, but Mr. Sebastian is already, And Baldroy, who, again, has not quite worked out what kind of a house he's in. Even if he's seen Mey-Rin and Finnian, he's not really thought about Sebastian in that way yet. Runs up to Ciel's room, climbs up the stairs, sort of crouches down the stairs, actually, and sees the 2 people trying to get into Ciel's bedroom. And he looks at them, it's 2 against 1. I've got bullets, but no cover. They'll have the upper hand if we start shooting. I can knock one of them down with a sneak attack, but the other guy's closer to the Runt. And he flashes back to that dead child in his past. Comparing that child to Ciel, and he looks up to be continued. And that's where we leave off. I'll admit I'm on Imgur and not like the official release, so I don't actually know how many pages that was. But that feels a lot longer than our normal page count, for the better. This is probably my favorite chapter of the flashback so far, just because, like, so much stuff happens. And you can even kind of see, like, where Yana might have separated these 2 chapters otherwise. Like, you could see she might have stopped it right after we get out of Baldroy's little mini flashback, and then had the back half of this chapter be 181. But instead we get both those chapters together, and honestly this chapter is all the better for it. one of the big problems with Butler is just how little comes out at a time. Not to deny all the other problems with Butler, like these unnecessary flashbacks, but like just having more of Butler at one time is a demonstrable improvement on what Butler has become the past few years. So this chapter is, again, one of my favorite chapters in a while. It's good. We get a lot of, interesting, like the stuff with Baldroy and Sebastian. It doesn't particularly feel necessary, but I've kind of accepted this level of unnecessary detail and its flashbacks is what Black Butler is kind of giving us nowadays. Like, we could cut most of this. This was all, the really funny thing is, I think I talked about this before, is that for a decade, Black Butler lived on just implying things, right? It took us 11 or 12 years of storytelling to get, the story of Sebastian and Ciel's contract. And part of that is because of Yana kind of hiding 2CT. But it's still, we didn't need to have all this information. And so that's kind of the recurring problem with Butler, is that all of a sudden Yana's decided, actually, we need all of this information. And we get it in a lot of detail. But it's still, it's fine if we have to get it. It's well written enough that I'm not mad, especially because we get more afterwards. So that's all well and good. And then, of course, we get to the actual plot, as Baldroy kind of slowly realizes the kind of house he lives in. That he's not the only soldier, not the only fighter here. He is the only soldier, but not the only fighter. That Finnian has this monster strength that he can't understand. Mey-Rin is this expert sniper. And even with that, he has not quite worked out that maybe Sebastian's in the same boat as the rest of them. Though admittedly, I don't even think Baldroy now realizes how far Sebastian surpasses all of them. Though maybe we'll see him actually get to get a read on Sebastian for the first time next month. But yeah, there's some actual good content in this chapter, which it feels like a low bar when I phrase it like that, but that's kind of the world we live in. And it ends on a genuinely well-timed cliffhanger of him sort of, starting a fight that he's not quite sure he can win, but this memory of his, I'm assuming, child burning to death, or being shot in the head and then the corpse being burned, is enough to make him resolve to fight for Ciel. Again, ignoring sort of all of the racial politics of Baldroy's backstory that I don't really want to go into, especially until we get more details on who burned down his house. I feel like the narrative wants me to assume it was Native Americans, but again, that's a very awkward, a very uncomfortable racial dynamic to really get into. So that's a problem for another time, let's say. But if you can ignore that, this is a really good chapter of Black Butler, considering Black Butler for the past few years. And maybe it's just, Yana wanted to give us a treat for the 15th anniversary. If that's the case, more power to her. But the chapter is fun. It's fun, it's good, it's well-paced. It's, I got not a lot to complain about here. It's just generally kind of a good time. So, yeah, I hope this is not just for the 15th anniversary, and is instead kind of a sign of things to come for Yana. She's getting back on track with actually giving a damn about this manga. But yeah, beyond that, that's all I gotta say for this video. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, but do whatever makes you happy, And remember, your life is your own, okay? Bye!